And joining us now here on In the Circle, he writes for MLB.comm and has had spoken to Joan Joyce, wrote a great in-depth article about Joan Joyce and her life and her great career that goes beyond softball. And joining us to speak about that right now is Matt Monagan of MLB.comm. Joining us, I know you're at the Hall of Fame right now in Cooperstown, and it's fitting we get to talk about a Hall of Famer here in Joan Joyce. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's funny I'm here. She should be all over this place, you know. Yeah, it's I'm happy to sad to hear that she passed away, but happy to talk about her always.
What was your reaction when that news hit on Sunday morning? Because your article started pumping up again out there. Because you had spoken to her when you spoke to her when a few months back.
No, so it was actually a couple years ago. It was 2020. I spoke to her and kind of just did a story on, being writing for MLB.comm, focusing on her softball exploits, but also just, I mean, her life is just it's a tall tale. It's unbelievable. It's kind of like, unreal. And so when I heard the news, I was just struck and kind of sad. I mean, it was one of my favorite articles I've written the last few years. So it was I loved talking to her. And yeah, so it was sad to hear, definitely losing a legend.
You spoke to her in 2020. I think the article first came out in 2020, and then you revised it. Is that accurate?
It's yeah, I think MLB.com reran it again,
Yeah,
just because they liked, the story and her career and her life. So I think it probably reran the earlier this year, maybe.
yeah,
And
in
then obviously
January. Yeah.
yesterday, I think they did a new article and they linked to mine. So yeah.
What was it that drew you to her to talk to her and write about her?
So it's funny. It's I was home. So 2020, I was home kind of in Connecticut, my home state, during COVID, and I was kind of walking around. I'm from Waterbury, Connecticut, and I was in the town, and Joan is from Waterbury and did a lot of her softball playing in Waterbury in Connecticut. And I saw this field in Waterbury that had her name on it, had Joan Joyce. It was named after her, and it was like this. It was a softball field, a brand new softball field, and next to it is Municipal Stadium, which is where she faced off against Ted Williams back in the 1960s. And I googled it. I googled the name Joan Joyce, and I was like looking at her Wikipedia page. I was just like, oh my god, 750 wins, 150 no hitters, 50 perfect games. Just like you're like, is this a real? Is this true? And I go home to my dad, who's from Waterbury, born and raised, grew up there, and he was like, yeah, Joan Joyce. I mean, she's a legend in Waterbury. She's, throughout her career, everyone knows her. Everyone knows her stories. When she left Waterbury and she kept doing all these different things, different sports, it would be covered in the local papers all the time. I mean, she was just like, so well known and so popular in the town. So yeah, that's how I ended up. I was like, I got to write a story on her and like what she's done. And yeah, and then I was able to get her number and called her, and she was very willing to talk. Um, and yeah, that's how kind of I got the idea for the story.
And you got a lot of stuff. I mean, I recommend people, if you haven't had a chance to read this article, feel to, because people, and I don't, and I'll be honest, I've covered the sport, I've covered her, and even I learned stuff from this article. She's arguably one of the greatest athletes ever. Like, people, I don't think, talk about her that well. A lot of people now know her more as the coach, but they don't talk about her as the athlete, not just a softball player, but she played other sports, as she shared with you.
Yeah, I mean, it was just almost every sport possible. She dominated. I mean, she was on the LPGA tour. She has the record still for PGA, LPGA round with just 17 putts in a round. That's still a record today. She played basketball, unbelievable basketball player in high school. Um, Scored like 67 points one game, playing for the national team. She bowled. She's an unbelievable bowler. Tennis, she was great in tennis. Softball was the sport for her. But she was, yeah, I mean, the thing is, she's not talked about as much as she should be. And I hope she is now. even more. But the thing is, talking to her, um, she's not a self promoter. She was not a self promoter, um, which is she's very humble and very matter of fact with what she did. She's like, yeah, I struck out Hank Aaron. Yeah, and it's like, it's like, wow, Hank Aaron, the greatest, maybe the greatest baseball player ever. So it's great to see that she was humble and like, but people probably would know more about her stuff if she was like more, like a Bo Jackson, like talking about what she did. But so I hope people can really write more about her and cover, more things she did in her life, because yeah, one of the greatest athletes ever, I think. Yeah.
Agreed. I probably and a really probably indictment on how we, back in the past we didn't do a good job covering female athletes and women's sports in general, and the
Yep.
coverage of it, because you mentioned she was in the LPGA tour for 19 years.
Yeah.
Like, and she drove it 30 yards longer, as you wrote in the article, than most of her opponents. She was like Tiger Woods on the driver in his prime, basically. And oh, by the way, she's playing in the bowling tour as well. I mean, she was the Bo Jackson of maybe
She
of
was.
the athletes. And Bo was tremendous deal, and it's just kind of remarkable to see all the success she had at the highest level in all the sports. Did she share why she picked softball over all those sports?
um Not real. I mean, I think she was just felt that was her best sport. That was the way she could continue playing, and play on multiple teams, play in multiple leagues. I mean, she told me, she had this slingshot windup that she kind of made famous. And there was something she said that they didn't have radar guns, really. They didn't use radar guns back then. But there was some USC study that was wanted to measure, like, speeds, somehow use some calculation to measure speeds of softball pitchers. And she was like, they told her she was like 119 miles an hour, which is insane. So that was her best sport, I think. And she could hit too. I mean, she hit over 400. Like, she was all around. That was her, I think, she said her best sport, and she loved it most, I think. So
Your article is titled "Meet the Woman Who Struck Out Hank Aaron," and it goes into detail about her facing Hank Aaron, Ted Williams, Carl Yastrzemski. Uh, Tell us, how did that all come about, where she got to face them?
I think that the Ted Williams thing was part of a charity, the Jimmy Fund, and it was something that Waterbury, Connecticut was putting on, and that was her hometown. And they were able to Jimmy Fund. Ted Williams was involved with the Jimmy Fund, playing for the Red Sox, and so he came as like a sort of exhibition to face off against Joan Joyce, the greatest softball pitcher, against the greatest baseball hitter, and he's called her the greatest pitcher he ever faced. That's a famous quote from him. And he couldn't really make contact. He couldn't really get the greatest hitter of all time couldn't get a hit off her. And so yeah, I think they did it twice. I think they did that 2 years. And then the Hank Aaron thing, I think, came from that after that. And it was like, oh, let's see how she does against Hank Aaron. And that was in Hartford, Connecticut, I think. And that was, like I said, had to bring it up to her, because she wouldn't, she's not, like I said, a self promoter. So I was like, so yeah. And then you struck out Hank Aaron. She's like, oh yeah, yeah. In Hartford, I struck out Hank Aaron. It's like, okay, yeah, that's just a side note to striking out Ted Williams. And yeah, Hank said, I think, like, the ball she had this riser, and he couldn't catch up to it. The Carly Yastrzemski was interesting. So she ended up living in Florida, and Carly Yastrzemski was her neighbor, which is just also insane. It's just them, they played golf together, and he said he was scared to face her. He was supposed to go face her at one point, and he said, I didn't want to get struck out by a girl. So that was that story. They never faced each other, but I guess they were good friends down there. So yeah, it's just these, like, bunch of Hall of Famers. She's just like dominating, which is just so cool. It was fun to talk to her about it, for sure.
And she was pretty open about it. In the article, it comes off as she's kind of shrugged it off, like, yeah, maybe you're supposed
Yes.
to, hit me, but yeah, he didn't, right? Like, okay, what was that tone like? I mean, I mean, these are some of the greatest hitters in the history of baseball. And she's like, yeah, I faced him and struck him out. Whatever.
Yeah, it's very like I said, just very humble, very modest, to the point that, that's, I think, part of the reason why people don't know about it is because she didn't talk about it a lot, because maybe it was just easy for her. It was like, I mean, I kind of had to pull some of it out from her, uh, but once I got, she would talk about, she remembered it, and like clearly, and like that it was fun, but I think there's a video at the end of the article of her at it was like a Red Sox tweet or something, and she said, you know, I'm most famous for striking out Ted Williams, but I have 150 no hitters. I have 50 perfect games. I won 750 games. Striking out Ted Williams was the easiest thing
Yeah.
I ever did. It's like, so she has that. I mean, you strike out Ted Williams, you got to be you got to have some confidence. So yeah,
You got to have that swagger as a
exactly.
pitcher there, right? I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah.
How much research went into this? Obviously, you spoke to her, but obviously, I mean, there were some great photos in this article.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you talked to other people. Like, how much talk about the process as you're kind of working on this article? You talked to her, and then obviously all the other research you had to do.
Yeah. It was a couple interviews with Joan. Probably half hour each, just talking about stuff. She was a coach at FAU, in that she's, there she dominated. I think she ended up getting over 1,000 wins there.
Yep.
She, yeah, so spoke to her. Tony Renzoni is an author of a book that came out, I think, a couple years ago too, and I spoke to him. He had spoken to Joan for the book, and he was great to just fill in some gaps. Um, who else? I'm trying to think if who else I spoke to. I got a lot of the photos from that book, from his book. Joan sent over some photos she had. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of just talking to her, you know, from some articles. There's not a lot written about her,
Right.
like we were talking about, which is crazy. But there was some stuff out there that I could kind of, glean some, research from too. But yeah, a lot of Joan, a lot from Joan, which was nice.
What was your expectations going in, and was there anything that surprised you when you left talking to her?
Well, I think just the fact that she was so humble, she was so matter of fact about striking out Hank Aaron. It was just it was funny to hear that. And but no, she was still, had clear, remembered each time she did it, remembered the Ted Williams face off. It was nice. It was funny because I was, I read about her before talking to her, and I was like, she's a legend. Like, she's like facing the greatest of all time, winning all these games, dominating all these sports. And I was like, little like nervous calling her. And I was like, okay. But she was, down to earth and very like I said, just kind of matter of fact, and like, just, talking about it normally, which was crazy, but like easy to talk to, which was really nice, for me. So, yeah.
Don't feel too bad. A lot of softball people felt the same way I did too. There's an aura there around
Yeah.
her, right? And did you sense that too, being around her? What was that like being around her? Where, I don't know where the
I would,
settings were, but uh,
it was a phone call, both times. So it was,
okay.
but I did, like I said, like it was that aura of, Joan Joyce, like, it was like the great, the greatest female athlete of all time, one of the greatest athletes of all time. Like, yeah, it was there, but once you talk to her, it was, I don't know, it felt good. Maybe it's because I'm from Waterbury and I told her that too. I was from her hometown, but it was, we had that connection. But she was pretty easy to talk to, which was comforting. It was nice.
What was the feedback you got once the article originally came out in 2020 from the baseball community? I'm sure you heard from softball community fans. I mean, what, because that's unique. It's kind of a unique combination there. What was some of the feedback you got when that came out?
I mean, people were, a lot of people still don't know about her and about her career. So people were shocked that someone was this dominant in like every sport. I think even my editors, like for the article, I think they're like, this must be a typo. Like it was one of her stats, and it was like, no, this is real. This is her ERA. And it was like, okay, wow. So it was a lot of like shock that like someone they hadn't heard about her, or like, that someone this incredible, a tall tale, her life. And people who did know her were happy to see promotion of her life. And some Waterbury people reached out to me. Like an former editor at the Waterbury paper was giving me some kind of just like I did some corrections on on something with the Ted Williams thing, which was, that was fine. That was good to hear. But yeah, a lot of just overwhelming, like, wow, she's like, this is legendary. Like, her name needs to be out there at the tops of the sporting world, the very top. So
It really is wild. I mean, because we all grew up. Everybody knows about Billie Jean King and facing Bobby Riggs and that tennis exhibition in the early '70s. We've seen Jenny Finch on This Week in Baseball growing, facing Major League Baseball hitters and things like that. So this is not the first time we've had some baseball softball deal. But you're right. It is kind of crazy that nobody knew about this stuff. That Joan Joyce faced Ted Williams and Hank Aaron. Like, if have you thought about what if we had Joan Joyce in this era with all the information out there in social media? How it would be covered today, you think?
I mean, yeah, it would be like watching Michael Jordan. Like it'd be like watching, like, if we had social media, Twitter, Instagram. It'd be one of those videos that are just going viral all the time. Her just over 100 miles an hour. A slingshot windup, just striking out. I mean, going to strike out the greatest hitter in baseball, going to strike out Hank Aaron. Like, it would be. I think it'd be a lot of viral videos, viral moments. Just like, yeah, it'd explode all over the media. There'd be a lot more coverage for sure.
Probably be like
Her name would be more out there.
It'd be more like a made for TV event, probably, right? Like, I mean, it'd be kind of, and maybe she would not have enjoyed that. And maybe that's what adds to the charm of this story is it's all kind of like a myth, like this legend. Like there is no video footage, so you're kind of there's something a unique quality, which I get a sense in reading your article and even talking to you now. That's one of the things you like about this. There's like that myth, right? Because it allows you to kind of be the storyteller.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of adds to her greatness, and her not willing to like really talk about it to everybody. And yeah, the no video, no, not a lot of footage, just photos, and like I said, few articles. It adds to that legendary status, that mythical element, which is fun. It's fun for a story a lot of the time, like especially in baseball, softball, any sport really. But I kind of hope people, understand her greatness more, and like kind of like retell her life and her story and her career, so that her name can get out there more and just be recognized as like one of the greats, one of the best ever. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think the fact that softball is so much more popular now, there's so much more coverage. Obviously, we do a podcast, but there's websites that cover softball and other media outlets cover softball. I mean, MLB.com has posted highlights of softball and things like that. I think it's going to help actually grow Joan Joyce's stature, which is kind of
Yeah.
wild, right? Like your article's obviously getting a lot of play, but her stature is going to grow more because now there's more conversations with softball and baseball. Obviously, since Jessica Mendoza does broadcast for baseball, coming over from softball, we're starting to see more of that interling. Now, I think now people are going to learn more about Joan Joyce. I think her legend will even grow more now, even though she's passed.
Yeah, I hope so. I really do. That's the key. I'd love to talk to somebody else, do another story. Maybe I don't know who. Someone who's faced her back in the day, and kind of just do another, another follow up kind of on her life, and like what was it like facing her? What was it like? Yeah, any sport really, but focusing more on softball, facing her in the batter's box. I think just now, get more pickup maybe. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking about now. That would be a fun one for me.
That'd be a fun one. And based on the reaction on social media when the news hit on Sunday, there's a lot of people, coaches and former players, and people that faced her that spoke highly of her. And how about her team actually played that day and won in honor of her, which speaks volumes to the person that you talked about. It's not ever about her; it's about everybody else. And I think it speaks volumes that her team went ahead, played, and won that game in tribute to her. Speaks highly of the person that she was.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. And they won, and that's yeah. Joan would have loved that. She would have wanted them to play, I'm sure.
Yes.
So that's great. I'm glad they did.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. I wanted to get the word out on your article because I read it was fantastic, and when I saw it, I wanted to get you on and to talk about it because I didn't know some of the stuff that's in this article. I encourage people to read it, and I think our audience will certainly get a treat out of it as we honor Coach Joyce and what an incredible life she led. I mean, and that's gonna be my last question. You've covered a lot of different athletes and sports. This is one of the best athlete lives that I can think of. After reading your article, that was my conclusion was, wow, this is one of the best lives that anyone's ever had as an athlete.
Yeah, you couldn't ask for a better life. Just excelling in every sport. Yeah, I was honored to be able to speak with her. It was just like, talking about the aura around her, surrounding her. I didn't think I'd get a chance to, and she was, and it was great to talk to her. She was so down to earth and talking about what she's done. So yeah, it definitely, there's not many, there's not many. I don't think I've talked to a better athlete in my career than her. I don't think that would be possible. So yeah.
Is this one of your favorite articles you've done in your writing career?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's one that a lot of people liked, resonated with a lot of people. A lot of people learned a lot about her. Like you said, you even did some stuff from the story. So yeah, I think it's definitely I think one of my top stories I've had a chance to do and work on in my recent past. So yeah, for sure.
The title is Meet the Woman Who Struck Out Hank Aaron. Matt Monagan, that's on MLB.comm. Check it out, Google it. I recommend it, strong recommendation. Where can they find your work and follow you as well for all other work? Because you do great work other than this, but obviously this is right at the top of the list. Tell the audience where they can find your work.
Yeah, I mean, most of my stuff will appears on MLB.com, and I usually, tweet it, promote it on Twitter, and that's just at Matt Monagan, Monagan. Yeah, usually I try to tweet out. I just tweeted this one out, promoted it again. So yeah, you can follow my stuff on there. Or go to MLB.com homepage.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I know it's a busy time. You're working on a project like you're in Cooperstown, which is kind of cool that I get to interview somebody that's working right now currently at Cooperstown. I appreciate you doing that for me and appreciate the work. Great articles. Was phenomenal. Like I said, I learned stuff that I didn't even know, and I've covered Coach Joyce for a while. So thank you for that, and thank you for coming on. And yeah, anything we could do to help you out down the road. If you do, yeah, we'll definitely get you back on if you got more Joan Joyce stories and other articles there.
I'd love to. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.